Hey guys, how you doing? So I saw the documentary Martyrs of Marriage during its screening in Dubai. I think many of you know about this particular documentary and also know whose documentary this is. For those who don't, um, it was done by Deepika Bharadwaj. She's a very loud and prominent voice for men in India. This documentary focused on Section 498A of the Indian Penal Code, which is also called the Anti-Dowry Law. Before the documentary was screened, a few men addressed the crowd and it was well received by the audience. Deepika spoke about how she embarked on her journey and what motivated her to be the voice for men and women wronged, tortured, and abused by this particular law. The documentary starts off with the unfortunate incident of Syed Makhdoom. I think I've spoken about him as well in my first video. So he's the guy who committed suicide after he was falsely accused of dowry harassment and his child was taken away from him by his wife. It went on to look at several other instances and also looked into several reasons why women filed these cases against their husbands, which has been spoken about at large in this particular channel. I went for the screening with three friends, and you know what? It pretty much opened their eyes a little wider than they already were due to my incessant rants. But yeah, they've got a better understanding of what happens and how women misuse these laws. Now, the documentary again, it contained conversations with the family members of the men who committed suicide, some men who are still fighting the case, and others who have fought and won against this draconian law. Now, even though I had read, about a lot of cases mentioned in the documentary and others as well, I honestly found myself utterly helpless and heavy-hearted. No matter the number of stories you have read, it will not prepare you for the heartache scene on the screen. It was really moving and showed how this one law can wreak havoc in a man's and his family's life. Now, while there was a lot I agree with in the documentary, there were one or two points which I believe were not entirely true or which I completely disagree with. The first is something that Deepika always parrots, and I think I've made the same mistake as well, which is that this law was passed with good intentions. I've made the same mistake, I think, in my earlier days, but through the years I've understood that, hell no, this wasn't passed with good intentions. I wanted to address this in the Q&A session, but was unable to do so due to constraints in the time for Q&A. Basically, I got the mic and they were like, oh, one last question, and somebody else jumped up and asked the question, so I couldn't really ask the question of her. I do not believe in its entirety that this law was created with good intentions, because the men in power might have passed it with good intentions, but the feminists who wrote this law had other plans in mind. If I'm not wrong, feminism reared its ugly head in India during the 1970s. This law was passed after a strong push by women's rights organizations, or in other words, feminists who follow an ideology, in the year 1983. So that's 13 years after the feminist movement reached India. I believe it's similar to how the rape laws were changed post the Nirbhaya incident in 2012. That a brutal gang rape in the bus, and how feminists used that particular case to completely overhaul the rape laws. The feminists, these women's organizations, they latch on to something horrific that happened to a woman in order to push their own agenda. I'm not saying that there were no dowry deaths, during the 1980s or the 1970s, because I really don't know. I tried to look it up, I couldn't find much. That just might be me. I don't know if somebody can help me with it, I'll be glad to talk about it. Now, yeah, I'm not saying that there were no dowry deaths. I'm saying that this law was not passed with good intentions. Like, the women who wrote this, or the feminists in particular who wrote this, whether it be man or woman, they did not have any intentions but nefarious ones. They were passed to ruin a man's life, and his family was considered basically collateral damage in the feminist war against men. It's just that plain and simple. A second point is that when one of the men that Deepika interviewed said that lawyers encourage these women to file false cases, and he seemed to blame them for large part. I mean, I completely fucking disagree. this is the rationalization hamster running around in his fucking brain. I mean, he's considering women as these innocent little puppies and is the big bad lawyer making her do these things to earn some money. Well, no. Fucking lawyers showed them this is a path you can take. Now the woman can actually deny and say that no, you know what? I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to deny that lawyers play a part, but a person with some self-respect and some principles would have just said no. As a matter of fact, I have a friend who was presented with the same thing. I mean, she was asked if she wanted to file a 498A case because it would make things easier, and she said no. Women have agency. They're human beings, and they can do what they want. The fact that people think women kowtow to what others tell them is the denial of the fucking truth. They know how to abuse the laws without others telling them, and are more cunning than people give them credit for. Yeah, so that's pretty much the only 2 points I had against the documentary. Other than that, I think it was pretty good. Overall, I'd have to say the documentary shows how men suffer under Section 498A. It's worth watching if Deepika ever plans to put it online. Deepika, if you are, please just fucking let us know. Anyway, that's it for today, guys. Till next time. Cheers.